So excuse me if I'm very tired, but I've had almost no sleep and have been very active hanging out with the London Carney crew all day. But on the way home I was so disturbed that I feel I need to make this video. See, I got on the tube and I got to sit in front of this beautiful baby. It was just me and this baby and his mum opposite me. And I had to endure 30 minutes of his mother feeding this baby just the most disgusting plant foods, and just watching this baby in agony as his ignorant mother, trying to be very nice to her or him, is feeding poison. This really affected me. It's lingered on till now. She began by feeding her baby some purple paste, and the whole time the baby doesn't want it, and she's forcing it down her throat. Oh, come on, eat a little, crying, this baby. And it's some plant paste. And then next, she got out some bread, just straight up white bread, little bits into, come on, crying even more. And this was disturbing to me. And I'm not sure whether I should have said something to her, but what are you gonna do? You're gonna tell a mum right there and think she's gonna listen to this hippie on the tube? But this is real. Like, this has nothing to do with veganism. This is most of the planet that has been tricked, fooled, duped, brainwashed into believing that plants are great. So we got all these plant and fruit pastes for very young children. How insane is that? She wasn't vegan, her mum, I'd almost bet on it. But she was feeding her normal baby stuff, but it was veggies. It wasn't even a fruit one. And this baby was in pain. Real pain. And had no choice in the matter. And the third thing she whipped out was some grapes at the end. By this point the baby's wailing. Seemed okay before he started giving her food. Soon as started giving her food, she was ill. And with all the best intentions in the world, this mother was murdering her child.
At this stage, your baby needs to have solid food at a really runny, smooth consistency. Lots of mums and dads try baby rice for baby's first meal, but you can also try other suitable fruits and vegetables.
They say to try a food for sort of 2 to 4 days to get them used to it, and persevere. If they don't like something initially, just keep on trying it, because often it's just them getting used to the consistency or the taste, different flavours.
So the American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended that we start baby on solid food somewhere about 4 to 6 months. I traditionally still begin with cereal. There's really not a right or wrong way to do this, but cereal is iron fortified and babies need more iron at this age. Once you've done cereal,
Exactly.
I hop right into vegetables. I do vegetables before fruits simply because of taste, and I do every new vegetable I can think of. The more stuff you give your baby, the better, because this is setting up their lifetime of eating. And so kale, spinach, all different kind of beans. You want to do everything. And even if you don't like it, play the mommy and daddy like this yum, yum, yummy food. So don't stop if your baby is not into it. Just keep offering things. As you know from parenting, it's practice, practice, practice.
And it helps in producing healthy and super brain babies. Certain fruits like avocado, kiwi, berries, and different varieties of fruits to be daily taken in the diet. And also when the babies are born, they should be 4 to 6 months onwards. They can be introduced in the baby's food as well. So fruits are one example, and the vegetables. So mashed vegetables could be given to babies. Certain vegetables like broccoli, sweet potato, pumpkin, carrots, etc. are super brainy foods. And green leafy vegetables like spinach, collard, chard, and all the green leafy vegetables, they are very rich in folate, which helps to the brain. Whole grains contain complete food in them, in the form of B vitamins, fiber, and proteins, and they are the super rich foods like whole grain rice, brown rice, red rice, and wheat, jowar, bajra, ragi, millets, etc. So they are to be consumed in the whole form. Then nuts, all kinds of nuts, especially walnuts or almonds, and peanuts, and all kinds of nuts for that matter. They are very rich in omega-3 essential fatty acids as well as in vitamin E content. So again, they are brainy food. They develop the brain much better. Because of too much processing of foods, we are not getting omega-3s from our food. So we have to consider taking some supplements also for omega-3, vitamin B, and multivitamin, calcium, protein, etc. For the mother, so the child would get through mother, and the brain would develop in a good way.
paste, industrial waste, feeding your love on oxalate base. Child of grace, pain on their face, phytic acid for a tortured race. Hear them screaming, caught by a demon. Their mother who smothers her child's not breathing. Frankenstein food, grown by the clan. Bill Gates smiling with blood on his hands. The angles are covered, got you tangled and smothered. Since birth your thirst for meat was colored by a force-feeding mother. It's the plan undercover, it's the man. No other, wake up and discover it's nature that made me. Machines can't change me, nature will tame me, cause nature contains me. I'm a human animal, I stand for us. You're a human cannibal, faking love. Written on our bones, in our heart, in our blood. We're made for meat, that's not up to us. No stress, no fuss, you'll turn to dust. Bless the earth when your curse gon' bust. Keep living a fantasy, Bambi Love Actually. Ignoring anatomy, muscles in atrophy, withering happily. Fear is your strategy, morals your malady. Stripping your sanity, living in agony. Emotional apathy, meat is an alchemy. He fell off the balcony, 21:30, just another casualty.
You don't like the carrots? No? I'm sorry.
Cereal?
Yeah, probably. Wanna try one more bite?
Hey, one last bite. One more.
Children need meat, fats. They need raw fats. The healthiest tribes in the world, the healthiest children in the healthiest tribes, weaned straight onto raw animal fats. How have we been so fooled to this extent? I'm interested, what are your views on baby weaning? So for example, Tim Noakes that you mentioned you know of, he went through a 4-year trial where he broke down to the judges that by all his research of looking at the healthiest tribes on earth, babies should be weaned straight onto raw animal fats or high fat animal based foods. Very logically, because breast milk is mainly animal fat.
Yeah, correct, and all those fat soluble vitamins. And I think during that critical phase of development, you know, fats are critically, vitally important nutrient. You know, omega-3, B12, vitamin D, iron, all the stuff you get from animal produce is absolutely critical to development. So to raise a baby as a vegan is just wrong.
But that's great, but this is why this fascinates me, is because this is much bigger than veganism. This is highlighting an overall myth that we've been pushed ever since, you know, let's say meat and 2 veg, you know, from that point, and slowly the food pyramid has creeped more and more, being completely comprised of vegetables with very little animal products. And so mothers are advised to wean their children onto vegetables and to actually keep off animal products for a later stage, which seems insane, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the diet should predominantly consist of animal produce, meat, fish, dairy, milk, with maybe a small amount of probably, I'd say no grains actually. We don't need grains in the human diet. And actually there's lots of things in grains and phytates and all sorts of anti-nutrients is actually really bad for your health, and we know that there's evidence for that now. So small amount of vegetables, small amount of fruit, but predominantly animal fat and protein,
Yeah.
for optimal health and development.
Yeah, no, it's good you said that and you mentioned grains because, yeah, one of the number one things is they're weaned onto rice or oats, which...
Just not good.
Nah.
The agricultural revolution, after the last 1,000 years, we've only started to eat wheat and sugar and processed foods. It's not how we're genetically and physiologically adapted.
There are communities that are still hunter-gatherers, and the Hadza in northern Tanzania are one such population. And this is a paper published in 1962. And I was looking for, so what do the children of the Hadza hunters get fed? Because it's not cereal from Woolworths. It has to be something else. Infant feeding was rendered soft fat as from the zebra, and bone marrow, both raw and cooked, are introduced in the early months. So the child is weaned onto fat from the zebra and the bone marrow. When the infant has 2 to 4 teeth, pre-chewed meat, so the mother pre-chews the meat, she's then fed, and by the age of about 18 months, the full adult range of foods will be consumed. So they will eat the meat, but they'll also eat some of the carbohydrate sources that are available. And so then the question was, well, how healthy were these children? And the main finding were the good health of the children in general, and particularly the absence of obvious malnutrition and anemia, were probably related to the excellent infant feeding patterns based on prolonged breastfeeding and the introduction of animal protein in the second 6 months of life in the shape of bone marrow and pre-chewed meat. So that's it, and that's how we've survived for 2.5 million years or so, eating these foods. And those are the foods that both the dietary guidelines for South Africa and in our books we propose. We've been eating this food for millions of years, and if we hadn't weaned our children onto these foods, humans wouldn't exist. Infants were randomized to either pureed beef or iron-enriched infant cereals as the first complementary food, and they noticed that the mean daily zinc intake from the complementary foods for the infants in the meat group was 1.9 milligrams compared to 0.6 milligrams in the cereal group, which is approximately 25% of the average daily requirement. And then they noticed that the increase in head circumference for infants aged 7 to 12 months was marginally greater in the meat group. Zinc and protein intake was a predictor of head growth. And we're going to come back to this. That first 1,000 days are so crucial, that the child must have the nutrients it needs to develop its brain. And we're going to discuss the evidence at the end of 12 months. If you measure the child's head circumference, you can predict to some extent its future intellectual growth. And that's frightening. If our intellectual growth is determined at 12 months, and it's determined by the quality of the food that we gave the child, and particularly whether that child had enough zinc and iron and other brain-specific nutrients to develop the brain during this period of explosive brain growth. And they noticed then that as breast milk is generally a more abundant source of fat than most complementary foods, total fat intake often decreases as the contribution of breast milk to total dietary energy declines. And this raises the question, why does breast milk have so much fat in it? Why does breast milk have so much fat in it? And the answer is because the baby needs that fat to develop its brain. And once you start cutting the fat, you can expect that the brain growth will not be as good as it should be. And so again, I make the point that the neonate is different from all other ages because the need for fat to grow the brain is so enormous. And that if we don't address that, we develop generations of children who may be brain compromised. Weaning onto eggs improves infant blood DHA, an important omega-3 fatty acid with its name, and iron levels. In other studies, this more rapid brain growth after birth predicts higher intelligence. That's a terribly important study. In evolutionary terms, meat, particularly organ tissues, would provide the ideal weaning food because biologically, children should be weaned onto a high-fat diet. They need the fat to build their brains. Carbohydrates are a non-essential nutrient. You don't need carbohydrates. You cannot build brains, you cannot build muscles, you can't build bones, you can't build anything apart from fat tissue from carbohydrates. And they continue, the nutrient density of complementary foods must be very high. Complementary diets in developing countries often do not contain adequate amounts of key nutrients such as zinc and iron because of lack of diversity in the diet and dependence on plant-based staples such as maize. What's missing? Meat and dairy products and eggs. That's what's missing. The recommended foods for complementary feeding should address the key nutrient gaps that are most prevalent in a particular setting. And that they should have added is the absence of meat, chicken, dairy, eggs. Meat, poultry, fish, and eggs should be eaten not once a month, not once a week, daily, or as often as possible. So in fact, once a day is not enough. If you could eat it 5 times a day, that's what that guideline says. You should eat it 5 times a day. The reason why we can eat meat easily because animals run away from us and we can digest their food easily once we catch them. It's difficult catching them. But plants evolved not to be eaten, and they have all these anti-nutrients which are designed to make sure we have struggled to digest them. And we never told that. And that's why we have to refine food, refine cereals and grains to such an extent, because we have to get rid of all these anti-nutrients. So that's the point. They're better absorbed from animal sources than from plant-derived foods, because plants have evolved not to be eaten. Most foods from animal sources is more energy dense than plant-based foods because of the higher fat content and better source of fat-soluble vitamins and essential fatty acids. And when you take animal produce out of the diet, it becomes fat-soluble vitamin deficient. As I showed you, on this, a cereal-based diet is deficient in vitamins, particularly vitamin D. Animal foods are the only, my emphasis, foods that contain enough zinc, iron, and calcium and riboflavin to supply daily requirements for complementary feeding, while being low in anti-nutrients. And you see what's happened is cereals and grains have been health washed. As I said, carbohydrates were health washed, but when we replaced fat, we had to replace some cereals and grains. So we had to make out that cereals and grains were incredibly healthy for us.
So this baby didn't have a choice. And you do, we do. So let's make it count. Let's make this life count. Let's be an example and feed ourselves and our families the best stuff possible. Because it's not complicated, but it ain't plants and it's not found in packets.
생명이 모든 사람들 속에서 계속된다고 믿는 거죠.
What you got, boy? A bag? Your sissy's eating all your liver.
C'est bon le beefsteak tout cru.
C'est Hugo.
C'est Hugo.
C'est maman.
C'est Hugo.
C'est maman.
C'est Hugo. Imas ba, Teya? Imas ba? Oh, wow! Upload ko to sa YouTube.